Good morning, everybody. Why don't you, for those who want to mingle, why don't you go outside for a little bit as we're going to start this next panel on hemp and CBD. And just for nomenclature purposes, and just to make, I think, the panelists' lives and our lives easier, when we're talking about hemp and or CBD for this panel, we're referring to industrial hemp with less than the 0.3% THC and CBD derived from it. I mean, obviously, there's hemp with greater industrial hemp, greater percentage of THC and or CBD can be derived from marijuana plants, but we're going to try to stick to what the 2018 Farm Bill addressed. In terms of my panelists, again, their full bios are in the book, but Michelle Bodian, she is a senior advisor, associate with Vicente Sederberg, LLP, another law firm in the cannabis space that excellent law firm that we do a lot of strategic partnership with. And so, Michelle, thank you for being here as representative. I know some other folks from Vicente are here as well. I just want to thank them. Kevin Polarsky from Revolution Enterprises. Kevin's Chief Commercial Officer. Revolution Enterprises based out of Chicago, Illinois, and they are active, the entity is active both on the hemp CBD side as well as the marijuana side. Kevin has graciously offered to be our panelist as our operator in the CBD world of ours. Next to Kevin is John Serio. John is one of my partners at Burns & Levinson, and John is in our intellectual property and life sciences group, but more importantly, John has extensive experience dealing with FDA and regulatory issues, and obviously, when we were talking about hemp and CBD, having someone with that FDA background is invaluable and will prove to be invaluable. Next to John is Katrina Skinner, who we've already met, but just as a reminder, Katrina is President and General Counsel at Safe Harbor Private Services, Banking Private Services, and she has been working with folks on the Hill as well as examiners and regulators with the whole concept or issues involved with hemp and CBD and banking that particular industry. And last and definitely not least, Rick Trojan, principal at the Hemp RoadTrip. Rick has been for about over 20 years an advocate for the hemp industry and has been leading the fight for legalization and for normalization of the plant. And he also serves as vice president of the Hemp Industries Association and sits on the board of Boat Hemp, Industrial Hemp Research Foundation, and Colorado HIA. So we have a very esteemed panel, and let me start off with the hard question. And anyone who wants to answer it, feel free. But 2018 Farm Bill passes. So is hemp legal? CBD legal? Is it descheduled?
I'll take that to start.
Okay.
Is it legal? Well, it depends on the testing regime. So there's 38 states that currently grow hemp. Of those 38 states, 76% test for THC delta 9. The other 24% test for total THC. For those of you that don't know the difference, THCA is the acidic form of THC that is non-psychotropic. Once it's heated or decarboxylated, it becomes delta 9, which gets you high. So what we effectively have done in 76% of these states has de facto legalized marijuana, because you can have 15% THCA and still test at 0.3% THC delta 9, and if you smoke it, you're going to get high. So what we're finding is, in many cases, some of this hemp is ending up on the black market. And just to give you one more crazy thought about this, in Illinois, we've had substantial theft of hemp plants, and they're finding that much of that flower is being sprayed with K2, a synthetic THC chemical, and then, again, marketed on the black market. So, yes, it's legal. The banks don't think so, but I think as we move forward and people learn more about the plant and the differences between THCV, THCA, THC Delta 9, we're going to have a reckoning in that regard.
But, so Michelle, I
Yeah.
was going to turn to you from the legal perspective, like the Farm Bill.
Sure. So I'd say yes, it's legal with about 12,000 asterisks at the end of that statement. So, in essence, hemp and the derivatives derived from it, like CBD, has been removed from the Controlled Substances Act. So federally, those products and the hemp that is grown is legal. But at the state level, that's a whole different story. Each state then would need to change their state drug laws to legalize the plant itself and the products derived from them. Most states have at this point, but not all states, and that's why we're still continuing to see arrests and prosecutions of drivers driving this hemp through their products. And then, while it's legal, that doesn't mean it's unregulated. So FDA still has their oversight preserved under the Farm Bill, and that regulates, products in interstate commerce, food, drugs, dietary supplement, beverages. So any of those products infused with CBD aren't legal in the sense that it's fine to be sold, and that's why you see FDA continuing to issue enforcement letters against people making health and medical claims and selling these products in commerce. The most recent letter issued just a couple weeks ago.
So then, John, you're the FDA specialist here, and so obviously you're in the hot seat being in the middle. I mean, what do you think?
I think that it's legal in some respects, Scott. I think it's legal to grow hemp and legal probably to even process CBD. But where it becomes illegal, and I think the Farm Bill specifically did not cede the regulatory control of CBD. It left it in the ambit of the FDA. That what you're seeing is an industry, and I'm speaking mainly about CBD, that has great promise. The medicinal use of CBD is not only well documented, there's an approved drug out there that has CBD as its active ingredient. I think that the problem you have is that all of the CBD products that we see in convenience stores and online and elsewhere are illegal products. They have no regulatory foundation, no regulatory basis. The claims that are being made are not supported by any clinical trials. So I think that you have a situation where you have this legal product with no regulatory foundation to put it into products for consumers.
But it's only legal if it meets the Farm Bill's definition of, under that 0.3% THC. And as you said, there's different testing mechanisms, not just whether it's testing the Delta 9, but gas versus high liquid chromatography.
Sure.
Let me turn to Rick. I mean, you're an entrepreneur in the hemp industry. You're a fierce advocate. What do you and sort of your colleagues in the hemp world think of? What do you think? Is it legal?
Yeah, so the reality is all cannabinoids are legal with the Farm Bill, including THC, 0.3% or less. It is federally legal. It's no longer a controlled substance. I think there's a lot more misinformation now than there was under the 2014 Farm Bill. And driving across the country and traveling the world, I think that there's a renewed fear of THC, which is unfounded. If you talk about research and studies, there's no evidence that in fact, you cannot die from cannabinoid overdose. You will not stop breathing. Your medulla that controls your breathing, your heart rate, has no cannabinoid receptors, coincidentally, so you can't overdose from CBD, THC, CBN, CBC, any of the cannabinoids. It's physiologically impossible. So I think it is legal. The states and sovereign nations need to create a regulatory framework that is going to be based on the USDA and FDA once they come out with their guidelines, which I was hoping would be before today.
I think we all were.
Yeah, take a bit, but the reality is, I think we just need to understand that all cannabinoids are now legal under the 2018 Farm Bill, including THC, Delta 9, and THCA under 0.3%, and that you can cultivate it, you can process it, and we've been consuming cannabinoids, right, as humanity for thousands of years. So I think we need to kind of come to reality and base this is a safe product if it's a natural product and it's been safe for hundreds of years. And once the USDA and FDA come out with their guidelines, then the states will create their regulatory infrastructures around that.
So then, I'm going to turn it back to Katrina. I know you spoke a little bit about this in the first panel. You said it's difficult to bank hemp. It's actually easier to bank cannabis companies. Well, why? I mean, if it's legal, and even our FDA expert says it's legal.
There was a caveat there.
With a caveat. I mean, why are you, not just you, but why are the banking regulators having such a hard problem with this? And I'm not suggesting you read minds, but.
Sure. So Burns and Levinson serves as outside counsel for Safe Harbor Services as well. So I had the pleasure of working with John and Scott this summer on doing an analysis on hemp, because I thought mistakenly that banking hemp was going to be easy. That'd be a great line for our financial institutions. And I also thought that if I could get them into hemp, maybe I could get them into cannabis. So then we'd get more local financial institutions as well. But just because it was descheduled or legal, it doesn't mean it's not a highly regulated crop. The problem is we don't have those regulations from a banker's perspective telling us what is legal and what proceeds that are being put into the banking system are in fact legal, because we don't have those regulations right now. And what we do have, the USDA's general counsel issued an opinion that it's legal in 3 ways right now. One, under the 2014 Farm Bill exemptions, under the 2018 USDA plan, which we don't have, and then under a state-approved or tribal plan. But we can't have those without the USDA's plan. So from a banking perspective, we're looking at companies that want to sell the product nationwide, but I need to understand where are you sourcing the hemp from? And if the hemp, you're getting this hemp, how do I know it's not non-compliant hemp, or that it tests at that 3% or 0.3% or lower? And my team is a frontline specialist. We're not experts in any of this. So we're waiting till the regulations roll out so we can understand, because we still have to comply with the Bank Secrecy Act and anti-money laundering rules. And those require us to ensure that no proceeds are put into the monetary system that are derived from illicit products. Well, until we know all of these hemp products or their derivatives are actually complying with the regulations, it's hard for us to understand where the sale proceeds are coming from or where they originated. So that's why.
But so let me ask this question. If a potential client came in, all they were doing was being a farmer, all they were doing was growing the hemp, does that change your analysis? In terms of how could you bank that person, do you think? They're not selling anything to consumers, they're just growing
It would
hemp.
depend on where they are and what state it was. So if it's from Colorado and they're actually validly registered with the Colorado Department of Agriculture, yes, but most farmers aren't just growing it to grow it, they want to sell it somewhere. So then I need to understand,
Well, it's a wholesale
right?
to maybe extractors or something.
But I still have to make sure that their crop is not, it doesn't test over the 0.3%, right? So if they're going to sell it, are they selling hot hemp or non-compliant hemp? It's just, there's just a lot of uncertainty now. So if the USDA comes out with those rules, that should help us all.
So Kevin and Rick, I mean, on the business end, are you yourselves and or folks that, your colleagues in this industry, are you experiencing difficulties with banking? And I'm assuming lending as well.
So in Illinois, we had 174 registrations to be processors. That I know of today, there are only 2 that are up and running. And as a result, most farmers don't have anywhere to go with their crop. And that's because those that registered thought they would get banking based on the 2018 Farm Bill. That's caused an incredible decline in prices. So isolate 18 months ago, which is the purest form of CBD, was trading somewhere between $12,000 and $15,000 a kilo. I was offered 50 kilos of isolate yesterday for $1,500. That's a crash. Okay? I'm a former Chicago Board of Trade grain trader, so I understand physical commodity markets. The challenge along with banking is there's also nowhere to hedge that crop. So if I were to forward contract with a farmer to buy his crop, at what price do I forward contract? I can't hedge against the price decline. Similarly, farmers were growing the crop expecting to get $3.50 to $4 a percentage point per pound, which is the mechanism by which CBD is priced. I know processors that are not buying any hemp and only doing tolling agreements, and if they are offering to buy hemp, it's under $1 a point.
But, I mean, there have been so many industry statistics out there saying, you know, the hemp/CBD market by, I think, 2023, it's going to be over a $20 billion industry. But you're indicating that the price is being slashed. So, I mean, what's your perception of where this, as someone who's in the industry itself?
So in a previous life, I ran Dow Jones indexes, and the indexing business is a data for sale business. Similarly to some of the hemp and cannabis services that are out there, they're trying to sell data, right? And the best way to sell data is to put out an extreme number. Now, I'm not saying that the market can't go to 20 billion, but it's not going to go there in a straight line. It's going to be fits and starts. And I suspect that the next 12 to 18 months are going to see a pullback in hemp production and in hemp usage. Now, I caveat that with one statement, and that is if the FDA comes out and surprisingly says that CBD is legal for ingestion, then you're going to see big companies like Coke or InBev get into the market. But until then, I don't believe that we're going to see, see this go to the moon.
Now I'm going to have to put John on the hot seat for just 1 second, and I want to come back to you, Rick.
Well, you got the lights on
I know.
already.
Well, you know, you just said if the FDA comes out with some guidelines, and now all of a sudden you can start selling legally or lawfully those CBD gummies that are in every gosh darn convenience store in America, what's the likelihood of that happening in the next 12 to 18 months from your previous experience?
I do think that the FDA is going to come out with further guidance. As you know, they had a public hearing and have accepted public comments about CBD. And one thing that the FDA is quite concerned about is really what's being sold out there and what's the quality of the product that's being sold. But more importantly, Scott, I think the biggest misconception is that the FDA doesn't have guidance or regulations concerning these products. They most certainly do. And many companies that are in the CBD space have in the last year or two, and back to 2015, have received warning letters that put forth the FDA's position on CBD quite clearly. Interestingly, earlier this year, those warning letters from the FDA were joined by also the Director of Compliance of the Federal Trade Commission. And so you see two regulatory agencies starting to look at the advertising, the promotion of something that has no regulatory basis. And what the FDA's position is very clearly is that there is an approved drug out there that has CBD as its active ingredient. It was approved late last year or the middle of last year for GW Pharmaceutical, a UK-based pharmaceutical company that was smart enough to get ahead of the curve and actually conduct adequate and well-controlled clinical studies. And so they have an approval for the use of CBD, I'd say pharmaceutical grade CBD, pharmaceutical controlled CBD for childhood epilepsy. They also have pending applications for use in pain, anxiety. So it's quite clear what the FDA thinks of CBD and the position that it's taking in these warning letters. And one can just Google FDA CBD warning letters, and you get their position quite clearly.
But Rick, I mean, isn't it, and I don't want to put words in anyone's mouth, but I probably will anyways. Isn't the industry looking for, especially after you have Mitch McConnell's public pronouncement telling the FDA and telling USDA to hurry up, isn't the industry looking for a pathway, I'll say an easier pathway than what John has mentioned, to actually produce and sell CBD-fused food and gummies and whatnot? Or,
I
well,
don't,
then I'm asking Rick. I know what you think.
I don't see that happening in the near future.
Well, but Rick, isn't that what people are waiting for?
So I think there's a couple different, there's the pharmaceutical angle, right?
Yes.
Which is the isolate, the GW, Sativex, and those sorts of items. But then there's also the dietary supplement and then the food
Right.
side, which I would hope the FDA, and this is something I would hope they would come on the side of saying that it's been in our food system for eons, and it will continue to be in our food system. I find it interesting here in Massachusetts, I learned today that you can't sell food from hemp-derived CBD, but you can buy edibles from marijuana-derived CBD and consume them, which I think is ironic and interesting.
Well, it's two different licensing.
Yeah.
And I know, Michelle, you worked at Mass Department of Agriculture at one point.
Yeah.
I mean, isn't it that for whatever reason, hemp's under one?
Right. So a lot of states have bifurcated their programs where, you know, the physical plant is with the Department of Agriculture, and that's who's regulating processing and growing. And we actually, before the panel, were chatting in Massachusetts, you can possess for home use up to 6 marijuana plants, but you have to have a license for, you know, to grow any hemp in Massachusetts. Just completely different schemes. You have to, if someone comes and inspects, you have to say, oh, this isn't hemp, this is marijuana.
But isn't the, I don't want to say the end game, but it seems to me from a commercial perspective, from a B2C perspective, taking out the topicals, right? I mean, isn't this ingestible CBD products, isn't that where the market or the industry hopes to go?
I think that the challenge that we have is that none of this stuff is tested, right? So some of the larger companies are now finally providing third-party testing and truth in labeling. You know, that increases the cost of production. And so, you know, I think that's a good first step. But until we get a regime where testing is required, you don't really know what you're getting.
I mean, we're dealing with companies like InBev, Coca-Cola, Nestle, right? We're in a weird spot because we don't have enough production of CBD currently to serve Coca-Cola or InBev or any of those larger Nestle, right? But we have a lot more production that can serve the smaller mom and pop outlets. So we're in that weird place in the market where we don't have enough grown to serve the big companies, but we have too much grown to serve the current market. So I think we need to catch up, and I don't see how it wouldn't be ingestible. I mean, these companies are calling, and the rage around CBD, these companies are calling and asking for CBD to be in their Coca-Cola, for example, right, or Hardee's in the burger, but we just don't have enough production to get there.
Well, how can we not? Well, let me ask a different question I was about to ask. I know, Rick, you've been involved on the international hemp market, international CBD. I know folks here have been as well. I mean, aren't you able to import CBD from China?
Yeah, so in fact, the reason I started my bus tour was because my friend down the street could import CBD from Denmark, in this case, or from Europe, but we couldn't make it on our farm in Colorado and sell it to our friends in Kansas, for example. This was in 2014, 2015. But yeah, you can import it from across the world. In fact, China just opened, I think last month, just opened CBD for their cosmetic market. Not ingestible, but they're starting to actually import. China's actually importing American-made CBD as we speak for their cosmetic line. So it's global and it's going to continue. I think that import and export that market is going to continue to grow.
But first of all, is the quality similar to what you get here? So for instance, Kevin, I don't know if you import any.
We don't.
Okay, but if the price were significantly different, would you import CBD?
So I should take that back. We own a pet CBD company that does import from Europe, but is looking at sourcing domestically. If you buy isolate's isolate, right? It's 99 or 99.5% pure. It's pretty difficult to not know what's in it. I mean, we still test it nonetheless, but you know, when you start talking about, so when you extract CBD, you really have 3 forms that you can extract into. You can extract into crude oil, which is the crudest form of extract. You can extract into distillate, and then you can extract into isolate. And each of those first 2 extraction processes have different levels of CBD in them. They also have different levels of other cannabinoids and can have different levels of hard metals, even pesticides. So, you know, that's why I keep harping on the fact that without third-party testing, you really don't know what you're getting. And I think in Illinois, there's a bill being passed that all CBD products must be third-party tested in order to be on the market. I think if the FDA, or at least if the USDA, adopted that same kind of regime, it'd be a step in the right direction.
But it seems to me that there, and I know, Rick, you've talked to me about this, there's an explosion across the world, South America, Europe, whatnot, about Southeast Asia, companies producing more and more CBD. How much of that is actually, if you know, coming to the American market?
There was a break, a company in Colorado, Hemp, they import from China specifically, and they, for about a year and a half, they couldn't import into the States, and so they had to market into South America and to Europe. They're now able to buy from China again, and able to import from China. I visited 4 of the 5 factories in China that do CBD extraction, and I mean, the quality, to Kevin's point, test your product, test what's coming in, understand what you're buying, but that should be a normal business practice, right? So whether it's coming from the UK, Germany, Colombia, China, the US, right? Test your products to know what you're getting, whether it's distillate or isolate or crude, so that you know what you're putting in your formulation. I think that's just a good business practice.
But from a business perspective, we just heard that the price is going down. I mean, I'm not a huge fan of tariffs, right? But since we live in a tariff world right now, I mean, should the industry be worried about being flooded with cheaper CBD? I mean, we're talking about a industry, you know, in America, maybe $20 billion, but I assume that CBD produced in, you know, China or Colombia or where not is cheaper than, even with the import cost, cheaper than what can be bought on the U.S. market?
Well, it's an incredibly nascent industry, right? So we're learning as we go. We did 80,000 acres of hemp in the U.S. last year. This year, 550,000 were registered. That's a 600% increase, right? Maybe half of those actually got planted. It's still an incredible increase. So I think the other piece that people need to think about is this 0.3% number was, in fact, arbitrary. It was originally published in a study, a white paper in Canada in 1972. In Switzerland, their THC limit is 1%. In the rest of Europe, it's 0.2%. In Colombia, it's 1%. In Panama, it's 2%. So if you've got more liberal testing thresholds in other places like Colombia, you know, you're going to find more production is going to be done there. Not only that, the closer you get to the equator, you know, the more likelihood that you can get 3 to 4 crops a year. But conversely, the closer you get to the equator, the more likelihood that your crop will be hot because of the angle of the sun, because of heating degree day units, for a whole host of reasons.
How easy is it to import CBD? I mean, if CBD gets stopped, you know, in a railway, in a train going through Idaho or a truck going through Idaho, how the heck are we importing CBD? I don't know if anyone, Michelle, do you?
Sure. I mean, I think it is getting in, and actually there are guidance documents issued on how to label and, you know, what port of entries are more friendly and how to get the product in. But I think you touched on the bigger issue. You know, if you're talking about is CBD isolate from China going to undercut the market here in the U.S., you know, U.S. products are getting stopped and people are getting arrested. So I'd say maybe eventually, but right now companies are too risk averse to try to figure out how to prove to, you know, Joe Schmo sheriff that yes, you know, this box is labeled in Chinese, but here's a certificate analysis from China and now from the U.S. trying to show that it is legal. I mean, that paper trail is hard to prove, and hard to prove when you're pulled over at the side of the road at 9 p.m. at night.
If the CBD comes from a hemp plant that is grown in China or whatnot at 1% THC, I mean, how do they import that? Or do they even able to test from the original hemp plant that was derived from?
They would need to have the paperwork showing that it is under 0.3%, and USDA, I believe just last week, did issue some updated guidance about importation of hemp and the derivatives.
But
So they would typically dilute that in some kind of carrier, so that when it comes into the States, it is 0.3% or less by volume. Right. Is how I've seen it done from China, from Germany.
And isolate's
we've actually
different,
had,
right?
Yeah, we've actually had more success exporting our CBD than taking it around the States.
So I was going to say isolate is different, right? If it's 99.9% pure, the THC is fully remediated. Now, when you go from the plant to crude, the fact that you're extracting it, you're automatically concentrating the THC within that. So this morning I was offered crude oil and it tested 0.75 THC. And that's total THC. That product's illegal. But there's not the enforcement dollars to go after that. Similarly, if you go to distillate, unless you THC remediate that distillate, it's going to be hot.
And most distillate does have high THC,
Right.
just by definition almost,
Sure.
or by the process.
Right.
So within the industry, is there support for more sort of testing, labeling, if there is even a sort of sole voice in the industry, or?
I think it's inevitable, right? The bigger companies are already doing it. They see what's coming down the pike. You're seeing state legislatures require it now that they start to understand that much of the stuff that's sold at gas stations and convenience stores is crap, really, pardon my French. But the FDA did a survey, I think it was about a year ago, where they tested 30-odd products and 24 out of 30 didn't contain the CBD that was listed on the label. So, again, nascent industry needs more regulation and needs better enforcement against those that don't comply.
Scott, I think that Kevin hit on a very good point, is that when you start importing products from around the world, you have we have pesticides in everything we eat.
Right.
And there are tolerance levels established by the EPA. When you start going around the world, there are pesticides used in China or even in Europe that there are no tolerance levels established by our EPA. And so I think that as far as the import threat, the import problem, I think that pesticide levels and the presence of pesticides in these products is going to make perhaps domestic production more advisable.
I mean, one of my farms, we had about 300 acres outside of Colorado, and it's an organic farm, certified organic farm. We found pesticides in our hemp was runoff and overspray from other fields. So that issue is definitely a concern, right, across the board.
But I guess the question is the hemp industry ready for self-policing? Because it doesn't seem like there is an overall agency. It's like, for instance, USDA is going to hand out the licensure that you may need, or it'll go back to the states. But then the production in terms of the consumer products then seems to switch to the FDA, at least with respect to the CBD component. Obviously, hemp can be used for a lot of other things that's not digestible, like fiber, clothing, and whatnot. But is the hemp industry ready to self-police itself until the feds can get their act together? Or should they?
I think we have been, right, for the last 4 or 5 years, right? So there is no guidance from the federal government, right? So we have been policing ourselves. There are nefarious characters out there in companies, of course, like in any industry. But there are good players that are raising the bar and testing, third-party testing, publishing their stuff on their QR code so that consumers can be better educated about what they're purchasing. And I think, I hope that can continue. So
it looks like we're about out of time, but I want to leave some time for questions because this is a great group of panelists. I don't know if anyone in the audience, and also because we're blocking you from lunch, does anyone have any questions for the folks on the panel? Do we have a microphone? We have a question up front.
Well, while we're waiting for that question, I'd like to make a point, and that is that, and maybe this is more of a question, is CBD brandable, or is it just an ingredient?
That's a good question.
Right? We believe it's an ingredient, just like flour or sugar. It's a chemical compound. Now, there's been some very successful companies that have branded it, but whether that's sustainable, I think, is another issue.
I mean, if isolate is isolate, what difference does it make?
Whether it's
whether you
Charlotte's
call
Web or
it
Ginseng.
XYZ isolate?
Well,
or?
processing can change the quality or the robustness of an isolate. And so I think that, yeah, it is a commodity. It's like flour. but there's gold medal flower, and then there's Stop and Shop flower. It's probably the same thing, but there is you know, quality issues.
Hey, hi, thank you. So you guys are talking a lot about the farming aspect of CBD. What I haven't heard you talk about is anything around the biosynthetics or anything like that. So right now I'm seeing reports coming in, let's say in the Congo. Congo's got about 9 million hectares growing for CBD right now, based on my knowledge. You guys talk about, like, you know, South America, Lasito's really popular right now. What about the science end? I mean, right now, in order for me to, if I'm doing it indoors, I need lights, I need tables, I need things to grow. If I'm doing it outdoors, I'm maybe getting a harvest a year, 2 harvests a year. But then I got the science guys who are taking a little sugar, sprinkling out algae, throwing it in a bioreactor, and microalgae farming cannabinoids. And, you know, I'm seeing groups that can produce, you know, 100 kilograms of cannabinoids, any cannabinoid, in a week's time. That's scary. That is very
Yeah,
scary.
I don't think we're there yet. I think that's a threat that could be on the horizon. Like in any industry, there's going to be innovation. You know, whether you can, I mean, we've had synthetic marijuana, you know, out there for quite a while. I think it's called Miradol, and it really hasn't been all that effective. You know, certainly there's a culture around cannabis that once you turn it into, you know, something that's made out of algae, may or may not be the same. But I would argue that there hasn't been enough research because most of the research universities have been afraid of losing their federal funding. So, you know, the research that we've had on CBD has typically come out of Israel or Europe, and certainly on the THC side, that's been true.
Any other questions? Well, I can see we have a hungry audience. Thank you, everybody. This has been great. I know folks will have other questions for you that they can ask during the lunch break. And hopefully we will hear from the USDA one of these days, and more importantly, from the FDA. And then, John, you'll just be busy telling us what the FDA actually has said.
Okay.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Our keynote address will begin at 1 o'clock.